Hey guys, welcome to this special series of the Schbang in It podcast. This is a series that we're doing around our inductions. So this is made specifically if you're looking to join us, or if you're considering a career at Schbang, or if you've already joined us and are starting to get inducted into the system. I'm so excited about this particular podcast. This podcast talks about the solutions department.
Yeah, where we deep dive into how the solutions department really functions, right from a strategist level to the account lead to the group solution manager. So if you're looking at building your career at Schbang, this podcast is for you from the perspective of joining the solutions team. Of course, we'll also have a separate podcast for the design team in the subsequent session as well. But listen in, watch the entire podcast, and we have a lot of important learnings for anyone looking to grow at Schbang.
Okay, cool. Amazing, guys. So, as we know, this is a special series that we've done for people who want to join Schbang, and, also people who just joined Schbang. So if you've just joined us, then welcome to you. And if you're thinking of applying to us, then thank you so much for considering us. And we're also grateful that you want to work with this company. We've got some amazing people on this podcast. You'll see some of their names flashing below. And I think this is the core that builds the solutions department. So if you're thinking of joining the creative core of the company, or if you've just joined the creative core of the company, this podcast really takes you through most of it. What you will see is timestamps below on this video. So we've got like chapters within this. So if you've joined as a solutions strategist, then the first chapter is coming up for you. If you joined as an account lead, ideally you want to see the solutions strategist stuff and then the account lead stuff. And if you've joined us as a group solution manager, you want to go all the way through the podcast, or just skip to your part. So, that's how you can navigate this podcast. But we're going to talk a lot on this about how the department works. So actually, just want to put Akshay, maybe you can just start a bit with the context on, what we do here.
Yeah. So I would say at the core and at the heart of what we do as a team here is really integrating the creative side to the entire business in terms of how we get the briefs from the client, the way we service them, the kind of content we create, the way we actually take forward the vision of the client on all the platforms that we've got to deliver their work on. So a lot of our job actually really is from the integration standpoint, from a creative lens, of course, where we really put together and dissect the different nuances of the solution that's actually required to be serviced to the client, and working with the other departments around the central solutions team to actually deliver some of these services. So it could be, the SEO team, the media team, the influencer department, SMP coming together. But what we do at our core is really putting the entire solution together at the heart of what we do, and then working with the other departments and sort of servicing the client to the best of our abilities.
I just want to add here, actually, so for the listeners who are there, is that SMP is our motion pictures. We've got, I think, one of the things that we managed to do together, and just guys, please add as you see fit. But I think, one of the things we've been working really hard on over the last few years is this integration agenda. And you've spoken about the word integration multiple times. It's really about ease of business for the client, and it's about ease of work for the people who join the company, and really how that work can really flow really well. So we've got production integrated, we've got photography integrated, we've got search integrated, media. We've got
and I think we've taken the time out to build these verticals within the company itself, knowing exactly what clients want and how, like Akshay said, we are the solutions department, right? So how do we deliver the best possible solution that fits the client requirement in-house itself?
Yeah,
that's actually where the integration comes in. So I think the photography team was one of the last verticals we developed because we saw that was a need for the client, and in-housing it just made it a lot easier for our teams to get the client brief and get it executed in a timeline and in a budget that the client can spend on such an activity. Photography is just one. We also have media, SEO, tech, influencer management. So kind of building all of the verticals in-house itself to provide the complete solution.
No, and I'm also really excited about, while this is, we've started to call ourselves a creative and technology transformation company. And there's the creative core, which is, a lot of what you guys run. Yeah. And then there's the technology core, which has got the digital transformation, the creation of the ERPs, the CRMs, the data lakes, the website development, the app development, all of those things, which is coming in another set of podcasts. But that's really exciting. I'm really excited by the place where we are in the company, but you guys play such a critical role with respect to, just the way creative work is done for businesses. And I know that you guys, and we have another podcast on the creative approach. So, if you're going to apply to us for a creative role, you want to see two things. You want to see, one is the solution strategist part of this podcast, and the second is this, there's a creative podcast as well, which Aditya is going to do. So, both those places is where creativity takes a lot of center stage. So, I think maybe we want to jump first into the solution strategist role. Actually, before we do that, there's three roles, right? Like there's the, you guys are the vice presidents, and below you guys are the teams which run the group solution managers. Group solution managers have reporting to them account leads, and account leads have reporting to them solution strategists. And, so maybe we start with the solution strategist first, and just, in terms of the expectations from the solution strategist. If you're a solution strategist who's just joined Schbang, what are the expectations? What is some of the advice that you'd like to give?
So I think as part of being in a solutions team, I think the beauty of having a solutions team, and especially an organization like Schbang that has this team, is that it's not just pure servicing, right? You have the brains that go behind all of the work. And the beauty is that it's an integrated team. So it's not just doing the work that you're given on your particular brand, but you also need to have knowledge of cross departments across Schbang in order to give those correct solutions to your clients. So as a strategist, I think your primary responsibility is owning that brand, which is your baby, understanding it inside out, having absolute knowledge about what the brand, how the brand speaks, what it looks like. And I think that builds the base or the foundation for what you need to do in terms of strategic thinking or planning as you grow up the ladder. But at the core of the position, I feel like a solution strategist just needs to own the brand and be able to deliver on the daily responsibilities. I think we can all probably...
Yeah, like own the brand is a really good unit. And I think there's two things that you spoke about, which I think this will become another slug in our podcast also, which is about the core versus the integrated. We're going to talk a little bit more about that also. And I think this applies across the board, which is the core versus the integrated. So maybe you want to just explain to, people joining in, or, people who wish to join, just how we structure this core versus integrated structure in the company.
So I think what Kushnuma said is actually what I tell people when they're interviewing. Your brand is your baby. So as a solutions member, you're responsible for the day-to-day execution on the brand, the content, working with the designers to make the designs are done. You're the client POC. You have to get the brief from the client, understand it, work to ensure what the client has asked for is delivered in a creative or a video or, whatever content format that they want. The core responsibility is that it becomes integrated when you work with another department. So if I'm working with video to create, with SMP to create a video, then that's an integrated task. If I'm working with the web team to make a landing page for a campaign or make a website for the brand, that becomes integrated. If I'm working with media for media spends, that's integrated. But at the core, client POC, get the brief, understand the brief, execute the requirements. Your core responsibility, like you said, is everyday creativity. So that is something that we have in the solutions team as well, where you are responsible for putting out the best creative work on a day-to-day basis on the brand. And I think your brand is your baby. This is exactly what I tell people, because as your brand grows, just like a baby grows, your responsibilities will increase on it. So if you come in saying, okay, I need to know everything end to end on this, that's where you will start actually seeing your growth, rather than just saying, okay, I'm only going to do this and this is my only responsibility. No, you have to look at the full digital landscape and everything that your brand can do.
I think I want to touch upon this a little more as we go along, the responsibility between the solution strategist and the account lead, because I think that's something that we'll dive a bit more into, because you got the solution strategist who's owning everyday creativity.
Correct.
And then you got the account lead who's responsible for assimilating the briefs, understanding the consumer, also.
Yeah.
So like I think the way we talk about it is the creative, the bridge, and the brain. So the creative being the solution strategist, the bridge being the account lead, and the brain being the group solutions manager. I want to talk a bit more about that, but let's talk more about the solution strategist and the creative. And I think also as a company, particularly with this service, with creativity being in the heart of it, I think maybe Akshay, you want to talk a bit more about how creativity at the heart of it, why at the junior most level, we want to encourage creativity at the heart of it, because, as it goes across, creativity is part of the DNA then as we do it.
Yeah, I personally feel, and I think I speak on behalf of everyone, that, the team is only as good as what we eventually execute, right? Like, we can have great plans, we can have a lot of fancy presentations, but if we don't materialize that into actual execution, it does not show in actual work. And I think that's where the strategist plays a very, very important part of getting things done, very importantly, and keeping creativity at the heart.
And getting things done beautifully.
Beautifully, exactly, right? With craftfully written copies or good art, for example. And I think that really allows us to build a strong rapport with the client, because eventually the client is looking also at the daily things. And we've realized that the better the daily content, the better the daily management, the bigger are the campaigns we actually execute, right? Because you're not fighting or not bridging the gap of your daily, right? Because you've already done that with the client and the client's happy. Now the next step is to take it to the next level and do something bigger, which becomes the bigger campaigns and the larger manifestations of the campaign ideas as well, right? So the overall in the DNA saying that if you can do the daily well, automatically the bigger campaigns come through those. And the strategist is actually playing a very, very important role in that place, where he's really owning the entire creative on a daily basis. And that's what's really pushing the entire team.
I love this analogy that we talk also about, like, when people bring in Schbang into their company, what they're infusing is everyday creativity into their company's bloodstream. So this everyday wins that you talk about is actually that little bit, that's something that you can share with all the sales force on the team, on the ground force, saying that, hey, this was so creative. We're talking about obesity and this is how we've done the creative around that. Or we're talking about Men's Day and this is what Porsche has done on that. So, that just really enthuses the entire system. And I think that's the vision that actually at the base we want to try and bring all the solution strategists with, that, infuse that everyday creativity into the bloodstream.
And actually that's the one key differentiating factor I would say that Schbang has over other agencies. They don't do it like that, right? It's structured very differently, where you have a creative team that does that. I think it's amazing what we do here differently, is because from that level itself, we're infusing creativity. We're saying you as a strategist are responsible for everyday creativity. The work that comes out needs to come from you. And that's how you become both strategic and creative at a very grassroots level. I think that's a really big differentiating factor that works very well.
100%. As we groom also the teams that we build out, and as we have this, we all keep shouting off the rooftop that we've got a global vision and that global opportunity that we have of taking the best creative talent from India to all over the world. And the base DNA of it is that everybody's got to be creative, and I just want to talk maybe a little bit, Rohan, if you want to come in.
So I just want to add one point. When I look at a strategist from a different lens altogether, obviously they come to us, maybe this is their first job, or maybe like a job,
second
third job. That's it. So I'm not looking at more of a capability from their perspective. I'm looking at the energy, looking at the enthusiasm, how we can channelize that energy into building them a proper creative strategist or a senior strategist in next 6 months, 1 year. Because that's the way we'll build the company from ground up. And that's the energy what we need in the company, which these young people can bring in and we can instill in the entire team. So that's a little bit of a different take than probably capability wise, because they're extremely young, new. They might not know how to make presentations. They might not know how to do strategy. But
that's so important, that energy that you talk about, and the energy that comes as an enthusiasm from everyday creativity. So the moment that creative is really appreciated, you see suddenly, you guys would have seen that, right? Suddenly a different kind of energy once the creative goes through the system and people are appreciating. And that's what a lot of the young talent that's joining us has, that restless energy. I think also, as we are evolving, we're seeing that the newer, younger workforce that joins us, the vision that they have on design or the vision that they have on writing, the energy of that is completely different. So that's what we want to actually invite with this.
And just to add to that, I feel like while they're really new and they have a lot of energy, they also come with a lot of hunger to learn. And what Schbang or the solution team provides them is that opportunity through the integrated department. So you don't necessarily have to have be an expert at every other department. Like, you don't need to have in-depth knowledge of how to make a website. But if you have those basics or you learn them while you're at your go, then you become a jack of all and a master of none, which is in a way very,
Master
very
of some.
useful. Master of some, yeah.
Yeah. Master of creativity, actually. Master of creativity and assimilating things together while being the jack of all. I think that's also a very important point that you bring up, because, and as we move to the account lead discussion, what you will see is that the account lead is a lot of like really putting the heavy blocks together, while the, we talk about this part of the solution strategist dealing with different people. So I just want to touch a little bit on that also. But before we go to that, in your own examples, like everyday creativity, how you unleashed within the solution strategist, or like examples of great solution strategists who've unleashed everyday creativity within your own examples, and what that's done for you guys, if you want to talk a bit about that.
So I would like to just talk about a couple of examples. One is Apollo Hospitals. So we are doing a lot of work for them. The space is also very interesting because of the COVID, obviously, medical has become suddenly the forefront of everybody's conversation. So the way we do work on Apollo, a lot of ideas come from solution strategies when it comes to like a basic designs on either obesity or heart day. These kind of creatives, what we do. These are campaigns which we activate along with the strategists who are coming up with ideas, and the designs and the creativity what goes into it is as good as a print ad. And you have seen some of the work on Schbang pages as well. So that's one thing. And second thing, when we got Upstocks as one of the clients, and they came to us with a very unique problem that we have a very negative sentiment in the market, how we can change that. So we took a strategic approach to act the movement marketing game and work on it. So we have got so many features in last 6-7 months that the brand has been talked about a lot in digital social. And people look at Upstock's page as one of the pages wherein movement marketing happens in the best.
And that's such a critical point you raise about the, let's make every creative like a print ad. Because, it comes back to Akshay, the point you said about the putting creativity on an everyday basis, which just like excites the entire system. And I think the way to look at it is, I think over the last few years, people have looked at digital content as content.
Correct.
But now can every piece be looked at as a creative, artistic piece, which is worth putting money on as a print ad? Or
I think that's so important today, because where we started from maybe 10 years ago when digital started coming up, there were maybe 10 brands active on digital. Today you have everyone online. It's so cluttered. So your content really has to like hit that mark and be that ad that a person sees and remembers, like, oh, Posh did this for Men's Day. Everyone is going to be remembering this for the next 6 months and being like, how do I create an ad that people are going to talk about for the next 6 months? And like, that's actually
and the winning brands are the ones that are differentiated and consistent, right?
Correct.
Like, so how can I be consistently differentiated? And that's the role that we want for the solution strategists. Actually, I want to talk a little bit about also, a lot of the solution strategists, they come in and say, hey, I can't write that well. Hey, I can't, I don't know how to design that well. So what are we doing across the board, and why should people who are excited to build a career that way? So there's 2 points here. One is what Kushnuma said about the strategist. I think it's a fantastic career move, because like you're sitting here, you're driving creativity, and you learn how to get creativity. So which is what I'd love for you to talk about. And then there's the bits and pieces of following through on the website, on the film. So you really get a really rounded learning on stuff. But what are we doing when people say, hey, I don't know how to write necessarily that well? So what are we doing that in our system?
I think one, it's a mental block. I think we all can write if we want to. If we really put our heart and soul to it, we will write good copy and we will flourish in it. And I think even for me, it's always been a mental block that I can't write copy. But if I want to, I think I really can. And I think proactively as an agency, what we do is that we really train people who come onto the floor. So we have an entire setup called the Schbang Academy, which really does trainings right from copywriting to art to understanding SEO, fundamentals of media, planning, and almost 10 sessions happen on a monthly basis, wherein we are picking up on different topics and really grooming you all right from the fundamentals to also a slightly more enhanced version of the same topic. But the objective of us actually doing that is that everyone is coming into an institution like a Schbang, not just to groom themselves as individuals, but also to grow themselves as a personality, right? I think that's what the academy is aiming to do in the system.
No, and also doing really well.
And doing well. I mean, in the past, I would say in the past year and a half, that we've been really active within the Schbang system and externally as well. We've trained almost 700 people, right? And And we're seeing the kind of results we're getting from the trainings. People are actually coming out with better copies, better ideas, better strategy. And so I would say, treat your job role at Schbang. Of course, you're working at a professional agency, but also treat it almost like an extension towards your college, wherein you're learning on the job. And I think the excitement of being in a place like Schbang would be that you get to learn a lot on the job.
Yeah.
And there's so much you can actually add to your personality by attending these sessions, more importantly. And what we feel is that the more you attend, the more you learn, and the more rounded you get. And I think we've seen that many people have actually maybe had an inkling towards a different department altogether. They've realized that they have an inkling towards maybe SEO or production, and people have actually switched their roles within the company after learning something new within the system itself. I think that's an exciting place to be.
So, sorry, just to add here, when people are switching roles within the company because they've been groomed as a strategist, they have a good understanding of what can and cannot be executed. So, if a person is moving to, say, the tech team or the media team, they have an understanding of what the brand is and what the brand requirement is, and I think they have the best of this world as well as that, and are able to work with the solutions team and provide better solutions rather than, just. I mean, I've seen this in the past when people come from other departments, like consistently suggesting, and it's just not going through. And it's because they don't have an understanding actually of what the brand wants. So generally, when you start as a strategist and you move to another department, you have a better understanding of exactly how the brand works, what the clients want, what is executable, and then you come back with even solutions for us accordingly.
And a lot of the material that comes in to the solution strategist therefore comes in from the account lead or the group solution manager on brand thinking, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where the roles interplay. So I mean, I actually don't want it to seem like the solution strategist is doing everything, because we're kind of like saying, to simplify, what we're saying is that three things. One is creativity. Creativity is like one thing. Second is know the consumer, and the third is this bits and pieces of learning all of the other pieces of the puzzle, which the heavy lifting is done by the account lead, whereas the follow through is done by the solution strategist. So by the time you're then the account lead, you have the ability to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of
I
narrative.
just wanted to add one last point to what Akshay was saying as to how Schbang Academy provides and helps people, not just people from outside the industry, but also people in our office as well. And there's an instantaneous result that I got from one of my solution strategists who attended one of these copywriting training sessions, and immediately after half an hour he came up with a concept that we got an approval on, like in one shot from the client.
Amazing.
So he understood the kind of tone of voice that the brand needs to speak, right? And he owned it in a few minutes. So that's how proactively it adds
I
value.
think the beauty of the curriculum that we have internally is that it's not just like bookish knowledge, it's actually practical practical content, practical learnings from real world examples. And I think that's what differentiates us from most of the other content we find online. This is really picking up real examples that have worked with brands. And I think when you learn from those, it just becomes so much more simpler because you can see the result of the content or of the strategy as well. And that's a big
and I think, that's a great point also, because from the Schbang point of view, while we do a lot of in the outside world, we see a lot of academy in the outside world. In fact, it's even more vehement in the inside world. So that's something that, and I'm so glad to hear this, what you're saying about somebody who's brought that switch. So let's talk a bit. So we've spoken a bit about creativity, and Rohan, you've given some examples. Anybody else wants to give examples of the everyday creativity?
So a lot of the stuff that happens on Fevicol is done by the strategist. There are moments that are picked up, and then my strategist has a lens of, does this work for Fevicol or not? Like, you have to have an understanding of what your brand proposition is. Does the moment tie in well? And then we can, do that everyday creativity. It's not about fixing every moment, with your brand. It's about understanding and identifying that. And I think the strategist on that brand does it really well. So that's definitely one that I want to call out.
And when we're talking about the creative strategist and the solution strategist, we've got two roles within the company. One is the creative strategist and the solution strategist. So how are you guys seeing that shaped quite differentiatedly from where you guys sit?
So, I mean, from my point of view, the creative strategist should be working with the solution strategist on more long-term solutions. It's not that one post that they need to win on. It's what's the monthly theme for the brand? What are the kind of assets that we can create which is not part of your day to day? Like, what are those standalone things that you're going to do? Maybe a video, maybe a influencer tie-up. How do I take it to the next level? The base I'm expecting the strategist to have. The creative strategist comes in and works with you to take it up a notch.
The analogy that we speak about, right? Like the creative strategist and the solution strategist, both responsible for everyday creativity. And as we put out, our the way we put it outside is that the creative strategists get involved to try and get a page with 500k plus likes to carry us, saying that this is that amazing. And the solution strategists try to get a page which is 100k likes to carry us.
Correct.
And at the same time, we're talking about the creative strategists as like boosters to the plane when you want to add it in campaign time. But I think also just the point to make is that, if you're trying to choose a career with us or even building your own career, whether you choose to apply as a creative strategist or a solution strategist, because the solution strategist, we're keeping creativity at the DNA, but also making people who want to be leaders who can govern a lot of people and govern a lot of brand strategy, whereas the creative strategists go up the route of, really unlocking creativity at the core of it, so that kind of those boosters which come into the campaigns that you guys do. So, like you said, therefore the boosters,
Yeah, and I think also for me the differentiation is solutions is if you join as a strategist and you grow up, your understanding of the client business improves, and therefore strategy improves, and creative, like you rightly said, unlocks more creativity. And they kind of work together to be like, hey, this is what the business needs. Okay, hey, this is how creative can solve for it. So
how to make it more visible, distinct at like really higher levels. Because we speak about everyday creativity, and then there's the creativity that really transforms businesses.
Correct.
And then as you go up the level, that's the creativity that then transforms businesses. So I think that's amazing as a interplay between the two.
I mean, they are different, but they do work together. So what you learn as you grow is significantly different, but you have to still work together to get the best solution for your client.
I think the solutions strategist also provides, that framework under which a creative strategist can add their creativity, because as a strategist in the solutions department, you're like the gatekeeper for the brand. You understand the brand, you know what works, what doesn't, and you can give that direction to a creative strategist.
But I feel that lies more with the account lead.
With the account lead. Like the framework is, maybe we can just move that now to the account lead, because it's a good point. And maybe we may not, we'll have the time slugs going in and out, but, to the account lead, because the account lead is then more playing that gatekeeper role, and kind of really deciding when to pull in the creative strategist, when to pull in the solution. Solution strategist is always on for the brand, but really when to bring in the creative strategist and when to bring in the creative team, how to distill the briefs, how to sense what the solution strategist is doing with the consumer. So the other agenda that we're driving now more is consumer obsession. So this, maybe we can start with this interplay between solution strategist and account lead when it comes to understanding consumers. So maybe actually want to talk a bit more about like what we're trying to drive with consumer obsession at the strategist level, and how does that tie in with the account lead?
So I think everything stems from understanding the consumer, right? Like whatever content you write, whatever campaigns you plan, it stems from really understanding where consumer is coming from, what are his worldviews, what are his backgrounds, because sometimes sitting in a cushy office like this, you forget that your consumer might not be the kind of people who we are, right? And a lot of times that we misrepresent them in the kind of ideas we come back to the client with. And we've realized this along the way that it's important that we spend a lot more time really talking to the consumers, and that's something we're trying to inculcate in the teams, that can you at least talk to 5 consumers on a monthly basis. It's a program that's sort of in the works right now, which we'll probably put out very soon, but eventually can you talk to at least 5 consumers every month, just to get a perspective as to what kind of content are they consuming, what are their problems, how is the brand going to add any value to their lives or probably solve a problem in their life. I think once that actually starts coming in within the DNA of really asking the questions and getting the answers from the consumer, that's when the creativity and the content will flow a lot more simpler, because you know exactly what you're writing for and exactly what you've got to communicate. So I think that's one integral part of how we're going to try getting more consumer mapping and centricity into the DNA of the strategists for sure. Of course, while we have the entire consumer team who works on more extensive researches in the company and publishes a lot of research papers and does larger research I think activities, but from a daily basis, we're going to try inculcating a lot more consumer speak. Of course, for now, we've been doing a lot of Google Forms, which is the simplest way of deriving data, but that's still.
Yeah, I think we need to go to the. So we're now starting to speak to them, because otherwise
Exactly.
it's the echo chamber mentality that which you're speaking about, which is that you kind of have certain assumptions about the consumer if you don't really connect or interact with them. And that, I mean, at the end of it, being a creative company, connections and being able to connect emotionally with people is so important to be able to delivering good work. So
and that's also where like a TL plays an important role, because as a team lead, it's not just your responsibility to get a brief executed, but also to understand and decode the brief. Very often what we get from a client is, my target audience is male and female, 25 to 54, living in tier 1 and 2 towns and cities, and that's where it stops. But who is this consumer actually at the core of, of like a 25 to a 35-year-old will behave very differently from a 36 to a 50. So what is that distinction? How do you bring that out? I think a TL plays a very important role in trying and understanding a consumer
even trying to put emotions to what is 18 to 25, right? Like, this is 18 to 25, but what are the emotions around that? Is a lot of where that work is going with respect to really understanding consumers. So, the strategist and the account lead, that's where the bridge, like you correctly said, meets, so the strategist is more talking to the consumers with the account lead present, but the account lead is kind of assimilating some of those lessons. And
making sense of it, making sense of the insights, and then making them more actionable, which can again be percolated down to the creative team or to the other departments as well from that.
And one thing I've personally learned in this journey is if you take something back by a consumer insight to a client, it's going to get approved very quickly. If like he said, we sit in cushy offices and we sometimes forget, and we take ideas which
we have a nice office.
But we take ideas which the client is just like, but why? And the minute you show them that thinking which the account lead brings, because that account lead has done the base work and is now moving on to the next level, if you present it with that thinking, it's very likely it's going to get approved in 1 or 2 goes. And I think that's the role the account lead really brings to the monthly planning, the decoding of briefs, the short-term goals that the
even the writing of briefs, right, for the creative teams, because better creative people perform best when the brief is really sharp with a strong consumer insight. And really that system is what we are encouraging more and more inside of Schbang, because just getting that together is what will unlock amazing work.
It's also structuring and adding to the framework, like the one who says, okay, this is what the task is, this is what we need to do, setting aside that this is what the strategist needs to do, this is
defining the roles of the team as well.
When the task comes.
That's why you call it the bridge, right? Like just bringing all the elements together, like interacting with, as you guys spoke about, the integrated part of the company, or rather the other departments which form integrated in the minds of solution, being a bridge to them, as well as being the bridge to the creative guys, as well as being the bridge to solution, and taking the brains from the group solution manager, bridging into the work that that we do and we put out.
And I was just saying that even from a learning standpoint, like we have many enterprise tools already onboarded at Schbang, which potentially becomes a big learning for anyone coming onto the floor for the first time. You can learn TalkWalker, we have an SEM Rush, we have a SimilarWeb, we have a Fields by HikuJam. So many tools to actually learn how to derive more data. Of course, could be secondary in nature, but at least just getting your hands dirty with how tools work specifically in our domain, which again becomes a big learning curve, as you grow in the industry as well.
Yeah, I think also, I think we need another podcast just deep diving into how to get consumer research out, because I feel like that is so interesting and deep as a topic. But maybe just before we move on from that topic and come again back to the account lead, just any kind of like advice you have or any experiences that you guys have had while interviewing consumers, which has really helped you get into the skin of consumers. Because I know we're doing more and more of this across teams. I mean, if you're watching this and you're already in a team at Schbang, you will realize that a lot of this is what is in motion right now. So it's not 100% compliant across teams, but soon will be. But, and that's why we're kind of putting it out here right now, because that's what we want to feed into the new blood that comes into the company, as well as the new teams that we build. But as some of you are doing this research, any advice that you have on like how to get the most out of consumer interactions?
So to add to that, we have a consumer research team also within Schbang, and we're doing a lot of work with them as well. So there's a brand that we're recently working with that I can't disclose a lot of information on. But what happens is within your TG, like Kushnuma was mentioning, you're 18 to 24 and you're 24 to 35. The interests, the preferences are so different that you can literally market each idea literally specific to that TG, and your tactics, your strategies become that much sharper because now you're understanding that TG to a very grassroots level. What moves them? What works for them? What do they like?
So I want to talk a little bit more about that grassroots, right?
Sure.
Like, how do you get somebody to open up? Because that's where the basis of ideas.
I mean, I think it comes back to the questions, right? Someone actually told me, they were like, don't ask them the questions the brand wants to know. Ask them questions to understand them as a consumer. So what happens very often is in a rush where like, okay, this is my strategy and these are the gaps, so I will ask them questions to fill in the gaps. And they're like, no, talk to the person as the person. Understand them. Don't give them a prescribed question that you are looking for a prescribed answer on. Then you're not understanding the consumer properly.
I think like don't interview them, like have a conversation, right?
Exactly,
No, that's the basics of research, right?
Yeah.
You need to have your eyes and ears open.
Yeah.
Then asking more questions, you listen to them and understand what they're trying to say, because obviously there are a lot of times between the lines also you have to dig out and come up with insights on that.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of research and consumer understanding in terms of, like for example, like you said, a lot of the brand comes to us say that this is the core TG we have. But once we actually go and slice it down, for example, if you're talking about a metro versus a tier 2 or tier 3, their behaviors, their consumption patterns,
even their fears, right? Like, how do you get people? I mean, how do you put people in a place which is comfortable enough for them to unleash their fears? And I'm just doing this more for the solution strategists that join us because, I mean, at the same time, I understand it's challenging because as a solution strategist, like you said, it's your first, second, third job, likely, which means you've just come into the world and of working and, you're kind of trying to navigate that and you're just trying to get your head around that also. And you're going into an interview, of course, the account lead is with you. But you're going into an interview, you kind of like are like, what the hell, I'm just going to take some of this stuff and ratify what my idea is, because that's the trap that we can get into. But what we really want to encourage our solution strategists is to be more free to be able to get that person to open up. So like, what are some of the things you guys have done to get people to open up?
So one of the things I always tell my team is try and put yourself in the consumer's shoes, because very often as marketers, we get into that whole trap of, my idea is this and this is how it's going to work and this is what I'm going to do. This is the big stuff. We often forget that if we were in the shoes of the consumers, would that really even appeal to us? Would we even relate to it? And that's the lens I feel like we really need to, as
so you put your hat on, which is that I'm in the consumer shoes. So like, just talk a bit more about that, like when taking an interview.
So while taking an interview, I mean, if I have a set of questions that I need to ask them, I'll probably leave it a little more conversational and probably ask them, okay, so if I want to know what their media consumption habits are, I'm probably not going to go straight with that question, but I'll probably ask them what they do in their free time. Oh, really? You do this? And do you also watch TV? Do you also surf the web? And I'd let those answers come from them and understand what they want. Because a very interesting, example that we recently had with our brand Garnier was they gave us a brief for a hair color campaign. And the TG for us was, women in the age group of about 21 to 35 in metro towns and cities. And when you say metro, our South Bombay brains directly went to, your English-speaking audience, people who probably consume Netflix. But when we actually spoke to the audience, we found that these are women in tier 1 towns and cities. They don't necessarily speak English. So when we got back to the drawing board and when we saw the idea we needed to work around, the idea was predominantly an English-first film that we were, suggesting. We wanted to change that to a more English film or a vernacular film. after speaking to the consumer. And that was just one of the insights that we came back with. We came back with a lot of misconceptions that were broken at that point.
I think also just want to add here, for us at Schbang, also a little bit of our audiences have a bit of a misconception. We are South Bombay based company, but I think these are the efforts we're taking, and actually anybody from all over India is welcome to work with us, because we are really encouraging that.
We have a lot of people.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Like, we're not a South Bombay company. We have so many people from. Actually, it's really funny because we have people across the country. So if there is a client who wants to know something in West Bengal, I pick up the phone and call the person in Calcutta and be like, do you have 3 people I can talk to? Like, we're not a South Bombay company.
Yeah, 100%. No, I just wanted to add that in, because sometimes we get that. No, I mean, it's not something that you said. It's just sometimes that's a perception that people have of us. So I just want to, maybe use this opportunity to try and.
We have Delhi, Bangalore as well.
We have Bangalore, we have Delhi. No, and I think that's a great point. Also, Isha, maybe you want to talk a little bit about how we use research on online platforms. We read up on there before we go into the research, when it comes to moms, babies, that kind of stuff.
So one of the brands that I manage now is for baby care, and that's actually a new category for me as well. And before talking to consumers, what the team did collectively is join all the mommy groups, follow all the competitor pages, and go through the comments on all the posts. They've actually done a maybe 50-60 slide presentation with just screenshots saying this is what moms are talking about. We see these questions related to breastfeeding, related to postpartum depression, related to rashes. Like, they've actually found out what the consumer is saying by social listening. They've done that, and then the next step is obviously talking to actual moms. But
no, I feel like that's also so good, because it kind of ties into the point, Kushtama, that you said about like wearing the hat of the consumer. So in a way, you're kind of wearing the hat of the consumer by going into their world on a screen, and then you're like assimilating a bit of that inside you, and then you're going into the world of the consumer as the consumer. So go in with a lot more humility and a lot more openness.
And on this particular case, I think it was extremely helpful, because all of a sudden the team was like, oh, there's so much more in the mom universe that we can talk about. We were so focused on what the brand wanted to talk about, but we're like, yes, we do have to talk about our products, and that is why we're existing on the platform. But if we're not talking to the target audience about what they are concerned about, then they're not going to come to the page and talk to you. If I'm so far away from reality on the brand page, you're not going to have that community who wants to come, who wants to talk to you, and then subsequently like even buy into the brand. So
and I feel like that's where the the beautiful interplay between the solution strategist, the account lead, and then the group solution manager comes in, because you have like the solution strategist and the account lead listening in. The account lead is then assimilating, saying, look, this is what the brand stands for. Because obviously, if the solution strategist knows what the brand stands for, account lead is expected to know even better what the brand stands for, because they got like solution strategists reporting into them. And then saying that, okay, this is what the consumer is saying, but these 2-3 lenses are very important from the brand's point of view. So this is what we're then going to take to the customer, and which is then what the group solution manager taps in even more brains into to refine it. And that's what enables you guys as vice presidents to have refined conversations with the larger level customers, because all our customers, I think most of the things that we're hearing from our customers, that we know what TG is as TG, but we don't know what TG feels as emotion. And that is one of the things that we bring to the table. So I mean, I think this is for anybody who's joining as account lead as well as solution strategists. And I think what we would encourage, or are in the process of driving more encouragement of, is for the group solution managers also to sit in once a quarter at least, understand, get out of the echo chamber, because then you got that, and you got the magic of everyday creativity, which is the point that you raised about every ad being a print ad. Or I mean, print ad is a little archaic, but every ad being an ad, you can put 10 lakh rupees on, so you can put it as a digital boost or a spend, but like it's something worth putting money on. And the magic of that is really what the the unleashing unfolds. So I think that is covering the everyday the solution strategist bit really. And Nikki, I want to ask you a little bit about some of the, maybe as we round up this section, what are some of the things that you look for, saying that okay, this is a successful solution strategist in attitude and temperament. We've spoken about the skills, And what are some of the favorite solution strategists do for you in terms of attitude and temperament?
I would say it's honestly the energy. I think someone said the energy that they bring in, right? The vibe that they bring in. Because Schbang in general, I love the culture that we breed here. I think anything, like whenever I've spoken to someone who's probably trying to join into Schbang or has joined or has spent in some time, the major thing that they always point out is the culture that we breed in, and that starts from ground zero, right? And it's the openness and the fact that they're boosting with energy, they want to learn, and it kind of amalgamates the whole core and the integrated part as well. You're not restricted to doing just one job, right? You're able to get into different paths. I have had senior solutions and solution stats come up to me very openly saying, hey Nikki, I'm interested in doing something related to media, or I want to do something into motion. So that it's not just one task that they're doing. And we have these open conversations, right? We're all approachable in nature as well. So as a culture, and that happens because you have that open culture as well. So I think that's something that
so the openness, the energy, the willingness to
yeah.
learn, the just jumping in, any
Yeah, you need to be like like out there, you need to have that hunger.
Yeah.
So that really takes you through.
Yeah, I know. Also while we're talking about hunger, for all those listening, a lot of the work that we drive through the Xiaomi stuff on, that's some of your team, and
Yeah.
a lot of the cool stuff that you guys have done. So just now going into the account lead, and as we talk a little bit about the account lead, we've spoken a lot about the solution strategist and the interplay between the solution strategist and the account lead, and really talking about the account lead as the bridge. So maybe Akshay, if you want to set us the agenda on, like just the framework on this bridge that we talk about, the account lead.
So, typically an account lead comes with about 2.5 years of experience. It could be at Schbang, could be from somewhere else. So typically they have worked across the board. They've worked with a bunch of brands in the past. They have a category understanding. They have an understanding of how the industry is shaping up. They have, of course, done a few campaigns in the past. So this bridge typically is a role wherein they're adding some more sense to the overall client briefing, to the client problems, which sort of becomes the base on which everything else starts to sort of build from. And then that goes down to the creative strategists, your solution strategists, and then they sort of start building the execution from those builds as well. So the account lead typically is doing the role of that gatekeeper who's really talking to the client often, front facing a lot of the conversation with the client from a slightly more strategic standpoint. Understanding the client problems, getting the briefs. I think getting the briefs becomes a very, very important part of their job, because eventually, how good the creative is a function of how good the brief also is. So if you can really ask the right kind of questions, document it in the right kind of format, and get the client to really think of those questions a little more in detail, the kind of derivatives you can get from those nuances will be a lot better as compared to getting like a one-line brief saying, I want to launch a product in this market, right? If you can actually dig a little deeper and ask the client the questions about why should someone buy it, or what the USPs, or how can I make a difference to the consumer's life through my product or service. I think those questions really go a long way in helping us build the strategy. And that's where the account lead really comes into adding sense to the overall client brief and then disseminating that to the rest of the teams.
Yeah, no, I think you raised some fantastic points to just open up a lot of the conversation here, which is, about asking the right questions to the client. And within that, there's also, like, I know we spoke a little bit about how to get the consumer to open up, but also let's talk a little bit about how to get the client to open up. So that's one part of it, because, as an open consumer is as valuable as an open client, and both are equally valuable to writing a good brief. And then you've raised the point about structuring a good brief. And you also raised the point about like really allocating, so when to go into the details, when to get
allocating, out. So like it's somewhere allocating work, but also grooming the team becomes one very important part of their function, because eventually even their growth is determined by how their strategist grows in their roles as well. So,
absolutely.
And that becomes very important for the account lead to really grow and become a GSM in the future when we're in the next couple of years, right? So, so a lot of the grooming happens at this level, plus delegation also happens simultaneously.
And our typical account leads, just for those watching, our typical account leads are handling maybe 3 to 4 customers. So that, then you kind of like get from 3 to 4 customers, then you go into a group solution manager level where you're then handling maybe between 6 to
10
12
to
customers.
12,
Yeah.
You know, like as you go along the journey. So that's really where it is. But you know, so you're coming as a strategist. You're coming handling one customer, at best maybe two. But really driving consumer understanding, driving creativity, driving bits and pieces of the understanding of the integration, and really you start to really integrate with the company at an account lead level. You know, because you really start to have more say in driving the direction at an account lead level. So I think let's talk about the account lead in these three parts. You know, it's a great framework of what you've just outlined, which is the brief, and you know, writing a good brief. Second is getting the client to really open up, and third is, you know, about this
the grooming, the growing, the
grooming,
delegation.
and you know, and the integration. So 4 points actually.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those 4 points a bit. Maybe we want to start with you know, one of you we start with the brief, you know, because that's so critical to the account lead success. You know, so what is for you guys as account leads write briefs? What is for you constituting a good brief?
It actually includes a lot of things. I'll start, and please do pitch in, because there's so much that we can ask in terms of a good brief, right? Very often we do have clients who come around with a one-line brief, and we do have to go back and be like, okay, but we want more information, because the more distilled the brief is, the better we can actually articulate and come back to you with, you know, our communication strategy and our campaign and all of that. So it's definitely starting from two things. One is the consumer and the pain point. Like, what is the objective? What are you trying to solve? So if it's a business problem, or if it's a new product, or if we need to get that first outright, that what is it that we're really trying to work towards, and who is the consumer, where is he based, and again into the nuances of the consumer, like we
Yeah,
spoke
so I
very
just want to
rightly.
add here, like, nuances means, like, do you want to, I mean, as much as do you want to get repeat trials, or do you want to get
Yeah.
them to try for the first time?
Absolutely.
Do you want to create just aura and hype? Do you want to drive conversion? You know, there's so many of these.
Within the funnel itself, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's awareness, whether you want to do consideration, whether you want to do conversion, there's so many things that you want to understand in terms of an objective also, and in terms of the consumer. What are their interests? What is their demographic? Where are they based? If you want to include media, you will want a lot more understanding of that as well. Then obviously, you know, understanding price points of the product, understanding
Versus competition,
yeah. And understanding whether there is a proposition already, we have to come back with a proposition. So it's a lot of cross questioning of, you know, how much can we understand the consumer, the audience, consumer's the audience, how much can we understand the objective, what is it that we're launching, and, you know, in terms of what we need to come back with then.
And one more thing is the market. Why you pick the market? Why is it going to work in this market?
Yeah.
Digital allowing you to do region targeting makes it very important. Like, regional languages, is that important? Do I change basis the consumer behavior in the market and add in West Bengal is different from Maharashtra, is different from Tamil Nadu? Very, like, just a proper understanding of why they have even chosen to do this in a market makes a big difference, and kind of gives us the upper hand in making that creative at the end of the day that will work in that area.
Also, budget is really important. as
Yeah,
well.
no.
Scale
I think we'll
and
come back
budget.
to you, Rohan, but yeah, like your point on
budget, right? Like, what is the scale and scope of how much they want us to come back on, whether it's big ideas, whether you want just hygiene, what is the level? So budget is really important. Also touch points, if they have certain touch points in mind.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rohan, you were saying
So
something.
I just wanted to add to both of you what you were saying. One fundamental thing I think the AL needs to do is to take a business brief from the client and convert that into a creative brief for the internal team, because that's what drives the business in the end. People come to us for business solutions and the creative ideas. So that there's always a difference when it comes to brief received from client and creative. Always say that I'm not understanding what the client is trying to say.
Yeah.
I think that's a very key role for an account lead to convert the business brief into a
and really have
creative
both
brief.
together, right? Here's the business brief and here's the creative brief.
And with their experience, they can come back with solutions. They can come back with understanding of the consumer or a business and translate that to the creative team internally to tell them what needs to be done, and these are the actionable KPIs we have to actually achieve out of this.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, you know, as we build out Academy also, that's one of the agendas that we will definitely, this brief writing and really the different kinds of some of the points that, you know, we should be already have. I mean, on our wikis, we already have a lot of the stuff led. So just for, you know, people who are not part of Schbang, if you're part of Schbang or you're just joining, we have a Schbang wiki where we have a lot of preset information put. There's a wiki for the Academy where we have a lot of the trainings put. So, you know, a lot of that is there. But I think that's a great point you raise about the creative brief versus the business brief. And maybe you want to talk a bit more about one level deeper into like what's the difference between a creative brief and a business brief.
So for example, a client might come to you saying that my market is stagnant, or my sales are not happening, or competition is eating up into my market share. So now the creative probably will not understand what they're trying to say or do. But once you convert that into some of the observations or insights saying that the consumer is feeling this and they are probably losing out the market share to a completely different category in itself. So can we include formats? Can we include content strategy? Can we include influencers? That kind of stuff. If these are the pointers given to creative to work on, which will combine that into a business strategy in itself.
No, I think that's such a great point, right? Like, because that is a fantastic example, because you're saying I'm losing market share and I want to gain back market share, but really then go into the why. Why are you losing market share, and how that will tie back in is with the consumer. And that comes back to consumer understanding, that comes back to category awareness, that comes back to pricing sensitivity, because okay, here is, to the point that you raised, which is that here is what the competition is priced at. And I'm going and speaking to consumers and I'm understanding that these consumers are super, super price sensitive, or that these consumers are not price sensitive at all, but they care about the fact that they want to be treated like kings.
Correct.
So, then the tone and the emotion of the communication will completely change because you have some brands who have a personality which is more like arrogant, or a little bit more, up there with respect to the way they communicate. Some brands are more with a servitude, and we've got that entire brand personality matrix also that a brand can choose in. So choosing that and the interplay with that is a fantastic point. Nikki,
also,
anything?
It's to add to the motivators that really work for the person.
Yeah.
If they look up to experts, then you want to add that angle. So it's also understanding not only what is the pain point, but also what motivates them to buy or do that.
I think if, like, to sum it up, you have to understand what needs to be done from the client, but you have to translate it to why when you're giving a creative brief.
Yeah.
So that's how the account lead needs to be able to be like, okay, I know what has to be done. Now I have to understand why, and then I have to give that to creative and work with them on the creative comms and the strategy that will help solve the what.
Yeah. And I mean, we don't always, but this, it's so beautiful, because if you just put it all together, you have the strategist doing the creativity, and you have the account lead and understanding the consumer, and you have the account lead really orchestrating the right kind of questions and putting these amazing briefs together, which really drive forth. And sometimes it's an interplay, right? Because on an everyday creativity, you won't have the time to put so much brief, because we're working in a really fast world, but maybe routinely doing these briefs. So, like, what would be the practices you guys would encourage to account leads to, really get this briefing perfect? I just want to start with that. Like, one thing that I want to start with is, I think always in the world of advertising, it's always like the client's not giving me information. But I think the question that I would try to put, and that's one of the agendas we're trying to drive at Schbang, is what's your right to the information? Why should somebody open up information to you? Because today we're in a world which is where, we're already talking about how data is as important as oil, and knowledge is key, and knowledge helps you win in the marketplace. The example that you beautifully illustrated is the knowledge of knowing why the market share is falling is the make or break of that business.
Correct.
And the question is why? What's your right to information? So a lot of our account leads, what we're trying to drive forth, and that's what we want in the new people that join the company also, is that what's the right to your information? Can you, if you know that Calcutta is the market, can you already do a bit more about that consumer in that market? Can you do a bit more about the competition in that market, and really put it in front of the client and say that, look, this is what's really happening. Now tell me a bit more. Because always we're asking the client saying that, tell me a bit more, otherwise I can't do anything. And that's really where we're going to be differentiated, a cut above the rest. So that attitude is what I would say is like one of the things that I would say. But anything else that, sure you guys have had multiple experiences with building great briefs.
I would just like to add, right, in 3 sentences, if I can put it. First one would be on the lines of getting a brief from the client. The second one would be refining it as to what you've understood. And the third one would be breaking it down. Whereas, that's exactly why you do your competitor analysis. You understand what you've gotten from the brief. You understand the product or the service. You understand the price point. How is that catering towards a particular audience? if there's a certain product in competition, how has the market or how has a different competitor taken that space? What is the tone of voice they've adapted to or adopted in general? And then you further go back, because it's okay if you don't have all the answers on your first briefing call, right? You can always set up a second briefing call where you have done your own research, and then you go back to the client saying, this is what I've gotten from your brief, and I want to build it further so that I have a clear communication that goes out to my creative team.
All right, so that was the end of part 1 for Solutions. Getting a job at Schbang, getting into Schbang, getting inducted into Schbang. We hope you enjoyed that. We're going to be linking to this part 2. So if you've seen it this far, the second part has a whole lot more in terms of insights. We go a lot deeper into the way the system functions. So we hope you enjoy that and see you on that one.